name is Derek Kolischek. I'm on the piano faculty here at MSU. I also teach piano pedagogy here, and it's my distinct pleasure to welcome you here. Being a piano teacher is something that I know that we're all very passionate about. And it's also something that is a lot of hard work, and oftentimes thankless hard work. Low-paid, thankless hard work. So I wanted to be sure that I thought it would be nice a couple years ago if we had something in the summer where piano teachers can kind of do what they want to do for a few days at MSU. Take piano lessons, hear some workshops about improving their craft, and get to know one another and eat some good food. So that's sort of the aim of today and tomorrow. I hope that you all have a wonderful time. If you haven't received the green folder that has some information in it, just raise your hand and I'll come around with those during our first session. Also, you should have an agenda in your folder that talks about what's going on. If you would like to play in a piano lesson, please be sure that you sign up on the sign-up sheets that are with Megan. Megan has those sign-up sheets. I'll be teaching piano lessons. Deborah Moriarty, who's the chair of the piano area here at MSU, will be teaching piano lessons. And Irina will be teaching piano lessons. Irina's lessons will be in here. My lessons will be in my studio, which is in 406 of the music practice building, which is just across the courtyard. And Deborah Moriarty's lessons will be in her studio. What number of studios? Sure. I think it's 100. It's basically, it's just around the corner here, yeah. That's right. First door just around the corner outside of Hall. Very easy to find. I wanted to say, I know that playing in a piano lesson might sound to be very intense, maybe threatening. It's the atmosphere of these lessons is anything but that. These are the last 2 times that we've done this. People have brought in pieces in various stages. People have brought in things that they have just started learning. People have brought in things that they've played for years, and any of that is fine. And if you don't wish to play, that's also fine. All of the piano lessons are open for observation, so you're welcome to sort of float between classes. I know that every time I watch Deborah Moriarty teach, I learn so much about teaching the piano. And I'm sure that the same could be said for Ms. Gorin. So be sure that, that you do that. If you don't want to play, be sure that you're sort of floating around and watching if you wish. There's also lots of great stuff to do on campus if you just want to do other stuff. And there's a list of some things to see and to do on campus. And be sure you don't miss tonight's recital at 7 p.m. Deborah and I are going to be performing pieces for 4 hands and 2 pianos, excuse me, here in Cook at 7 o'clock. And of course, as conference attendees here at Mission District. One last thing. Tomorrow night, we're having a barbecue at my house. I hope you will come. It'll be a lot of fun. I live very close to campus. I walk to campus every day, so it's about a 20-minute walk to my house, and it's a very easy 3-minute drive. If you could sometime over the course of today, let me know if you're going to be attending. My wife just wanted a head count in terms of how much chicken is up. So that's all I have to say. I'll bring you a folder, and Loretta is going to introduce our clinician for this. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks for coming. We want to say just a word about communication. So a lot of us, we weren't expecting to get such an international crowd coming in, but we're absolutely thrilled. So we apologize for any communication issues. We're piano teachers, not marketing executives, with our websites and Facebook pages, so we're glad you made it. But this is our wonderful speaker, Irina Gorin. I discovered Irina online many years ago, not many, maybe a couple of years ago, and just it's not only her quality of teaching that's evident in her students' performances, but just her beautiful personality and the way that she works with students is so wonderful to watch. So I was really happy that she could come and we could learn from her personally rather than online. As you know, Irina is moderator for the Art of Piano Pedagogy Facebook page. And it is going to be nice to kind of talk with each other, like in the panel discussion later tomorrow, face to face about our ideas about studio policies rather than kind of typing it in and hoping someone gets your point right. And so that would be really nice as well. So thank you for coming, Irina, and let's get started.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. I want to find out if you hear me well or I should use the microphone. Okay.
All right, let's make sure this is working.
Not everyone.
Then just turn down. There's an on switch.
Now, better. Any better?
No, better. Turn down. Yeah. There's an annoying hum. It'll go away once she picks up the sound. Okay.
Now, yes. Thank you. I just want to say I'm not English native speaker or a public speaker professionally. I'm just a piano teacher like you. And if you don't understand something when I'm talking, please feel free to ask questions. I'll be happy to answer the best I can. I've visited tons of master classes, tons of lectures, and 99% of them were about teaching advanced students, about interpretation, how to work with certain styles, but practically none of them were about primary stage of teaching students. And I think it's such an important area that all my presentations today are devoted to particularly this area. So my first session today is called The Importance of Primary Stages of Piano Lessons, but also developing of musical abilities of students at that time. I'd like to tell you a few words about my background and how I decided to become a piano teacher and what it brought, how I am here right now because of that. I found the love for teaching when I still was a child and student of music school. In Eastern Europe, all musical education goes through music schools, not private lessons. So what these schools are, every student has 2 private lessons a week with the teacher, piano lessons or other instrument lessons, and duet and accompaniment lesson once a week, and also several group lessons like solfeggio, music literature, choir. So basically, after regular school, all the children go to music school and spend 2-3 hours every day there. When I was a student, I had very good natural abilities, and my teacher left me in classroom with other students and asked me to work with them while she would go chat with her colleagues in the hallway or eat lunch. And I loved it. I looked forward for these opportunities. At that moment, I decided I want to be a piano teacher, so it really worked for me. Children who were accepted in music school, they were at least 6 or 7 years old, and they had to go through entering exams. If they didn't get enough score on those exams, they were suggested not to take piano or violin or cello, but folk instrument or wind instrument. Apparently, they were considered much easier instruments. So you can imagine that majority of the students in music schools had at least above average musical ability. The music school program was 8 years, and then only few of the students who graduated from there would go to music college, and I was one of them. Music college I was 15 years old, and to enter music college I had to play 40 minutes solo recital. Music college was a 4 years bachelor degree program, which included all the same subjects as music school, plus intensive courses in piano pedagogy. All 4 years, I had every week a group class with a teacher who would give us presentations and lectures, and we were assigned to read many, many books on piano pedagogy, and we had a lot in Russia. I wish we had as many here. We also had to search and learn and perform children's repertoire starting from very young age up to more advanced. I remember bringing files of books to the classroom and playing in front of all my classmates. And also we had such thing as pedagogy practice, which it was, I had to watch the lesson with a young student, with my teacher, once a week, and second time a week, I had to teach the same student on my own. And that was for the whole year, the same student, the same teacher, and me. And my grade depended on that student's progress. So after 4 years of college, I entered music conservatory with 5 years of intensive pedagogy courses, plus piano performance degree, accompaniment degree, a solo chamber ensemble degree, and piano pedagogy. I thought I was completely prepared and ready to teach. Still while in music college, I was offered a job at music school. I was extremely excited. I received 12 beginners, all ages 6 and 7 years old. I flew to my work, and after that first day, I didn't have all 12 on the same day, I felt completely helpless, devastated, not knowing what I'm going to do. Of course, I wasn't prepared for that. So I started back then, it was many years ago, I started my research and started thinking, what can I do? How can I fill this first lesson with certain activities? All I had it was there were two. I'll show you later. This one is available here. Anybody familiar with that? Yes. So I'll show you later. The whole field was introduced in the beginning of with all the notes. Okay. So all the notes were, so the whole key was there, and then we just start playing. It's called the Russian School of Piano Playing by Nikolai. It's printed by Gorin and Paul. It's actually much better than what I had. It kind of goes a little bit slower. Because mainly you can see what we had. We start with students right here, and by the end of the first year, we have to be right here. Loretta mentioned the article pedagogy. The other day there was a question. For teachers who use Faber and Faber, do you use Faber and Faber? You're familiar with primary level, right? How long does it take for a student to graduate from primary level of Faber and Faber? And the questions, the answers varied from 6 months to 2 years for students, average students 7 to 10 years old. So you remember where it ends, right? Just 5-finger position and C, and students stay there for 2 years, and you can see where we were supposed to start students. But unfortunately, not even students with above average abilities, most of them were struggling. And the thing is, they had to play exams every 3-4 months with certain requirements, plus technical exams. and not all of them survived, of course. I didn't have a freedom of individual pace for each student. I had to prepare them. So basically, it was like training monkeys. It wasn't any creativity, any work of imagination, nothing. My life took a major turn in 1993, and I immigrated to the United States. Of course, I couldn't imagine when I arrived doing anything besides piano teaching. But my English was terrible. I had no piano. I had no connections to find students. But I was very, very determined. And gradually, I built up a studio. My first lessons were $5 per hour. Yes. But for at least 20 years, I've been teaching students of all ages and levels, starting from 4 years old up to college level students and even amateur pianists in their 60s and 70s. But for all these years, teaching beginners was my most favorite, most fascinating, creative, difficult area of piano teaching, and that's what I'd like to talk to you about here. So, this is a picture of famous Russian pianist and pedagogue Anna Sobolevskaya, who wrote her own method, and and that's the quote I'd like to read to you. I truly believe that the first stage of piano science is the most important one in developing musicians. It's like planting a seed in the soil that could either grow into a big tree or dry out and die in the ground. And another quote by Joseph Levine. This is a picture of the book that I really think every musician should read. It's called Basic Principles in Pianoforte Playing. It's really a small book, but it's a wisdom. So he wrote, the teacher of the beginners is a person of great importance in all education, particularly in music. Certain things cannot be skipped in the early lessons without appearing to the enormous disadvantage of the students in later years. Those statements are very true because even advanced students can filter the information and not accept the bad instruction. The young ones cannot because they don't have experience or knowledge or even those analytical skills that older kids have. Almost every child, except for deaf from birth, has to a greater or lesser extent music abilities and the means for their development. This is the main reason why music must be taught to all children in one degree or another. However, only a few of the students who started taking piano lessons during childhood will become professionals. In teachers' work, we must differentiate our approaches to teaching gifted students and students with average and below average ability. I don't think we talk a lot about those students who are not going to become professionals. Unfortunately, many teachers think that teaching beginners is easy. Even though they, a lot of teachers would not refuse to work with those students who don't have very good natural abilities, they still use the same uniform approach. The same exercises and pieces, the same explanations and expectations. The only difference is a very slow pace of progress. The result is the child doesn't learn to play the instrument on professional level, but loses interest to lessons and music. The reason for the failure is not the child's absence of talent, but the teacher's approach, who didn't seek for the solution to resolve the problem. So how do we determine the level of child's abilities and deficiencies? Have you ever tried to? Yes? When do you do that? How do you do that? Yeah, I do the same thing. Initial interview. I would like Julia to come here and we'll introduce. This is my daughter Julia. She is not very young and she is not beginner, but she agreed to help me and be my assistant and play the role of the beginner. So at the initial interview, you can see we do several activities. Yes. How do we check musical ability? First of all, we do sound feedback. So I want to check how her voice matches the sound of the sound of the piano. Let's So I see that she really matches well with the sound. So I made a mistake. I assume she has a good musical ear. Then I try to play a melody, a little melody. So I try to check not only if she hears certain sound, but direction of the melody too. Like that. La, la, la. This is definitely easy for her, but for a young student, 4, 5, 6-year-old, it might be not as easy. Then we do rhythm playback, and I try to do it in form of game. I clap the rhythm and have her repeat it. And then I asked the student to make up a pattern so I could repeat. So for a lot of young kids, it's not very easy task. And some of them will do just like that. But some of them have a pretty complicated rhythm, and I can tell that this child has creativity and imagination, and it's very good. It's another very good ability. And then, yes.
What if they can't match the pitch? Do you involve it or just continue?
Do I do what?
What if they cannot sing back?
Yeah, so I assume this is something I need to work with them. And later today, I'll show you how I work with them. Okay. When I feel the student warmed up to me, I ask them to sing to me a song, familiar song, like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And the way they sing already show me if they have inner sensitivity, expression, attention to the detail. Some of them would just go, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And some of them would sing it, even if they don't match certain pitches. It's okay. The thing is here how they respond to the lyrics, how they respond to the changes of the direction of the melody. So it tells me a lot about their abilities. And the last thing I do, I take their hand in my hand and ask them to trust me and let me do whatever I want with them. I do just simple shaking or like that or circular motion. and check for tension. A lot of kids have a lot of tension in their hands. Thank you, sweetie. You can sit down. So it's really, really important. I don't know about policies. I want to add that these interviews are extremely important. Thank you so much. I forgot about this. Yes, you can go. Yeah. So, first of all, it gives me a chance to prepare for the first lesson with the student already knowing what to expect from that student. Then I have to tell parents about my expectations. No, that's a little bit too far. Yes. I have to tell parents about my expectations. Find out what their expectations are, because we really have to be on the same page. I introduce them to my studio policy about tuition, about payment option, answer all their questions. That all guarantees me that if I start with that student, I'm not going to lose it in 3 or 4 weeks, because they know what I want and I know what they want. I usually offer those interviews for free. They last 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how many questions the parents have. And most of the time, we keep a very good long-term relationship with those students who I went through with at initial interview. Another thing I mentioned at initial interview, the importance of immersion the student in classical music. I take time to talk to parents how important the classical music is to sound at home, at least like a background, or how important to take children to live classical concerts, how important to listen to classical radio stations in the car or CD recording. And I try to follow up with that. I ask them time to time, what is the last piece you've listened? But we'll talk more about that later. It's not this. Okay. Even though it's impossible to reach the same results for the same time frame with different children, there are some common areas in the process of teaching gifted children and students with average or below average abilities. And those are building the relationship between teacher and the student, developing musical abilities, mastering technical skills, which will be our next session completely devoted to that, learning sound production skills, studying notation, and learning to work on musical composition. And now let's talk about musical deficiency. What do you call musical deficiency? What do you think they are? Yes. Exactly. So, not very developed musical ear, not a good feel of the rhythm, weak memory, problems with concentration, lack of interest, imagination, and creativity. So how do we approach teaching students with such deficiencies? There are some common things we can do for such kids. Of course, everyone will have their own pace and everyone will have its own teacher's approach, but those are common areas. The child's music development, in particular, development of his rhythm and melodic imagination, should be emphasized on the lessons with such activities as playing by ear, improvisation, listening to music, and expressing the feelings with pictures and stories. Progress should be slow, pianistic requirements limited. The lessons must be prepared to deliver entertainment, many different types of activities at the piano and away from the piano, so the child doesn't lose interest. The choice of pedagogical material should vary in length, difficulty level, and the amount of different tasks. That's why uniform method, like one method, will never work for different students. I remember while I was working with paper and paper, after graduating primary level with tiny little tunes in one position at the end of primary level, and moving, and it usually for my students it took 2-3 months to graduate it, and moving to level 1, and kids were still 4 or 5 years old. And then they face 2 pages pieces right away. And that what causes a lot of frustration and disappointment right away. And teacher must be extremely patient, friendly, and devoted to the student. Let's talk more a little bit about the role of the first piano teacher. Successful teaching is based on a deep knowledge of child psychology. Lessons succeed only in the atmosphere of love, peace, and friendliness. Harsh or boring or monotone teacher can kill the love of music in a youngster. Even one tone of voice can make a difference in child's learning process. To make piano lessons interesting and exciting, we need to use everything that awakens the child's imagination and creativity. Fairy tales, artwork, lyrics to the songs, toys, and analogies in to everyday life. All of this helps the student to materialize the musical image and even find the necessary physical movement. I always have handy the set of toys, like little plush toys of different animals, and I'll show you later everything that comes with this. Books about composers for children. I often use YouTube channel to help in the lesson. I always ask, I've been asked, and again on art of piano pedagogy, every once in a while there's a question, how do you use the latest technology? And a lot of people write, I use such and such application, such and such games, but in my personal opinion, it all doesn't work. And later I'll explain why. I use only iPad for video recording my students and lessons and for showing them YouTube videos. And those videos are extremely helpful for students. For example, when I introduce, and that's where the video comes, if we can go to YouTube. When I introduce to a child a certain piece, it's called Little Porcupine. And do you know this piece? Little Porcupine by Kabalevsky. Yeah. First of all, the translation is wrong. It's not a porcupine. It's a hedgehog. And you can hear, you know the difference between those, right? So hedgehog has those needles, right? That's why it should sound so sharp. But kids, most of them, they don't know what the hedgehog is. So I show them the video.
I am a cat internet videos before you watch it.
See the reaction of the kid.
What's up?
Okay. after that, I don't need to tell them how to touch the key. They already know. They want to try even before I ask them. Or, for example, when I use, and this is on YouTube too, when I use analogy to physical exercise, for example, you know that kids' fingers like to collapse a lot, and one of very helpful exercise is, I call it inchworm exercise. So when we put flat fingers on the surface, and then we press on the fingertips and pull our hand toward it. Inchworm exercise. But again, to help them with that, I show them the video, very cute video. Very cute video with inchworm, very fun music, and that give them perfect vision how to do this exercise. So those are my main uses of iPad, and if we can. That's all right. So let's go to the very first piano lesson. First piano lesson is the hardest lesson for any teacher. As children don't know how to play yet, we need to fill the average 30 to 45 minutes with different activities, but without tiring or boring the child. Every piano teacher needs a toolbox of strategies to use on the first piano lesson. And those strategies are stories and analogies to the student, so the student can understand new concepts. And my method that I'm going to introduce tomorrow, Tales of a Musical Journey, gives a lot of those artwork and stories and different exercises for, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. Listening to and analyzing easy pieces. This is one of the very important parts of the lesson. Playing by ear simple tunes on one or two notes. Playing or clapping back rhythm patterns. Singing a familiar song together. Relaxation exercises away of piano or at the piano. Now I'd like to stop and talk of some of those strategies. Later today we'll talk about technique skills with the beginning. So today we'll just work on developing musical ability. It is extremely important to immerse the student in music from the very first lesson. For many children, classical music is a very strange and foreign area. Not very often, we teachers get a student from a family where classical music sounds at home or in the car, or they go to a classical concert. That's a teacher's job to make sure that children develop a taste for classical music, which will help them to keep the interest to piano lesson. Of course, parents have to be with teachers on the same page. I've heard from a lot of teachers, and even at the art of piano pedagogy, a lot of teachers say, I don't teach classical music because kids are not interested in that. So what those teachers do, they use method books and they find new popular songs to fit that student, to make them like to play the piano, but unfortunately it doesn't work that way. Those kids who don't like to play classical music, they'll get bored very soon with any kind of music and they'll quit anyway. My students play all kinds of music, from Baroque to very, very contemporary, and if they want, if they choose, they can definitely add something from popular songs or jazz, and I'll be happy to help them, but usually they don't need my help. All the skills they learn on classical music, they can use it by themselves. They easily sight read and they have fun, but they they do learn all other styles. My main goal is to instill as much love to classical music in them as I have myself, or even more. And here there was a wonderful video, it's not even in my playlist, and it was viral for a while. A little boy, 3-year-old boy, Jonathan, conducting Fifth Symphony of Beethoven. Have you seen it? And he is only 3 years old, but you can tell it's not the first time he hears this music. It's not the first time he's trying to move and conduct. It's instilled in him by the family. I think it's our mission to get children to that point when they can enjoy music so much and experience that kind of emotion listening to music. When we give up on classical music and go to pop music, we cut off the roots. Without those roots, the plants don't grow. And classical music is that root that our students mostly miss in their studies, especially those who stick to method books, because there are not many classical pieces in there. Listening to music is an important part. Thank you so much. Listening to music is an important part of each lesson during the first months of piano lesson. I start with introducing them to the program. Later, in a few weeks or months, they're already ready to listen to music at home by themselves. When kids listen to the pieces about animals, for example, with titles like that, the bear, hen, sparrows, little porcupine, they learn to listen and analyze the music. When I play it for them, or they listen it on CD or YouTube, I ask them questions. How different they sound? How do the sounds reflect the movements of the animal? How animal voice sounds? How big is the animal? The music can tell all. Usually kids are really good in answering those questions. On the very first lesson, I also teach the students that sounds can be sad or happy, the same as people or animals. For the homework, for the first few months of lessons, I assign students to draw a picture for every new song I play for them. For example, on first lesson I played to them bear and the sparrows, very contrasting to little pieces. And they bring me 2 pictures. Next time on the lesson I play for them one of the pieces and they show me the picture. So they already know what I'm talking about. After a few months, I add new challenges and new listening skills to aid students in capturing the mood of the piece, such as asking them to make up the titles for the pieces they hear and write stories to the pieces they are learning. New skills also include recognition of recurring musical themes and differentiation of contrasting themes. It's very helpful sometimes to move with music, such as clapping or moving with the beat or conducting. For such tasks with more advanced students, I like to use Piano Explorer method. Are you familiar with Piano Explorer? Most of you? I brought the whole file of Piano Explorers from previous years that I don't use. And please feel free if you'd like to take with you and look, and if you'd like to subscribe. I usually make a group subscription for all my students, and it's only $6 per year for 10 issues. So it's really, really great. The magazine comes once a month for 10 months. The articles are really easy read for children. When kid is younger, I ask parents to read. And every magazine includes new composer, new musical instrument, new performer. There is a beginner corner for really young kids. There are a lot of crosswords and puzzles and even musical jokes. Piano Explorer has a website with the listening guide. Do you know? No? I have, on a previous slide, I have a link to it. Okay. So you can easily find it on the internet. Just go to Piano Explorer. It already gives musical examples for articles. So it's really easy. They don't have to search for them. Each week, I prepare a worksheet because medicine comes once a month. So for each week, I prepare questions for certain article and certain musical examples. For example, here you see the example of that worksheet. So I asked them to read the article about composer, and next lesson they have to tell me 5 most interesting facts about composer's life, name several of that composer's compositions, and then they need to listen to the piece. Listening to the piece, they need to answer the question, what instrument or instruments this piece is written for? How does the original theme change throughout the piece? And then they need to draw a picture or write a story to what they heard. On previous slide, you saw kids' pictures to a Firebird by Stravinsky. We would show them. Yeah, those kids are 7, 8 years old. So it's not easy composition to listen, but they all listened, and that's what they came up with. So it's really neat. My only objection to Piano Explorer is when they put very unprofessional picture of a student on the cover, or write an article about technique, and it's really, really not looking well with pictures. But I'm trying to skip those. Another very important activity that develops musical ability is playing by ear. I usually start from the very first lesson playing the simplest tune with finger numbers 3 only, and later today I'll explain why. The remaining fingers are gathered in a natural relaxed state, and even if student's hand is not in perfect position yet on the first lesson, it's okay, we still need to work on developing musical ability. The good teacher will always read student's hand without student even noticing the correction and bring it to the comfortable state. While the student plays, learns, and enjoys the process. When playing by ear, it's necessary to pay attention to the character of the piece, direction of the melody, where it starts and where it ends. After a few simple tunes played, I start with them on black keys, exclusively on black keys. We then move to the white keys, and then we start transposing those, using black keys when needed. And here I have the video. With that work, with the video that had a picture. Not, yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't like it. Forget about it. Yeah. What is it? Yes. Let's go on. This is one of the first in fine. He doesn't know how to touch it, so I take his hand and I stick on I wrote them. Reinforcement ring. I stick them on the key so they know what part of the key to play on. So their fingers don't go like that. You see, parents are always at my lessons with students. Okay. Here are some more games and exercises and ear training and listening activities that might be used as part of every lesson with beginners. So we continue with the same things we started at the initial interview, and this time, if child didn't match really well the voice, so what I try to find is natural range of their voice. So basically, for young kids, it's about here. So I ask them to match, and when they start hearing that they do match without much effort, then I start going farther a little bit. And I'm very patient. I don't push them. I don't force them. I don't want them to get frustrated or scared. So I try a little bit, and then every lesson I increase a little bit the range. Then very interesting activity, and I wish we had a video, but we don't. So what we do, turn around. I play a note for a student, and then I ask her to move very quick and find the note of the yeah, very good. Let's try one more. So it might take a couple tries, but eventually they find if they need a repeat the sound. For older kids, we can even use second, and third, or fourth, or other intervals. Beautiful. So kids think to do. Kids love those. They first of all, it changes activity, and lesson becomes more active. They don't have to go down and look at music, and it really works for developing musical skills. Then I ask them to identify high or low sounds they hear, long or short. Or for example, I ask them, I play a sound on the piano and ask them to repeat the sound with the same volume and force, like that. Again, she is older, she's not a beginner, but for kids younger, it really requires their mind work. Recognizing the differences between sounds. The teacher plays sound C, and then another sound. And student has to figure out, is it above C or below C, how far from C, so many different exercises. Rhythm playback. The students repeat the same rhythm pattern and combine the sound. Uses the words like, what is your name? already work on their rhythm and their phrasing and melodic imagination. Then we can try again, when students move along, we can try to ask them to identify how many sounds I play at the same time. For example, how many sounds do you hear? One more time. Yes. Good. So that's another activity very helpful. Then I play for them couple times. Or then I play for them. Then they need to tell me what's the difference between these. Find certain words to describe the mood and character of each one. Even give me titles. Make up the titles. For example, how would you call the first? Radio. I didn't hear. How would you call? Have you heard the first piece before? It's produced by Irina. And how would you call? What would be the title for the second piece? Bunny hopping. Bunny hopping. Okay. The other one is my car in the garden, in the playground. So those little things, again, it's important not to stay on the same task for a long time. You can use it at different lessons, few minutes, but it really gets children into it and pumps their interest all the time. Next, I wanted to show you the video from Russian school when teacher gives ear training to a little boy who is 6 years old. And besides this kind of exercise, he harmonized a very hard melody, and the boy from the first time repeated it. It was absolutely, I really wanted to show you this, but unfortunately it doesn't work. So maybe I'll post it on the Art of Piano Pedagogy and you'll be able to see. Okay. Another very important musical activity we need to work on from the first lesson is the rhythm. Not many children have starting to trust. And you already know why. Because they don't have as much exposure to music, to moving with music. For example, in Ukraine or other countries of Eastern Europe, all children before they go to first grade, when they are 7 years old, starting from 2 years old, they go to a full-time everyday preschool. As an educational curriculum, every day in those preschools, they have music lessons, which include dancing with music. So these music lessons are led by professionals. Dancing, singing songs, moving with music, clapping, reciting very expressively children's poems, which is extremely important. Unfortunately, here I've never heard from any student that they learn how to recite. And it's so important because it teaches them where the important moments of each phrase, where to stop, where to breathe. No, reciting like saying out loud, very expressive. microphone. Nowadays, here, unfortunately, what I've heard from preschool, they maybe have once a week a little musical lesson, and maybe parents, some of the parents take their children to group music classes, maybe another once a week. It's definitely not enough for students to develop that feel of rhythm we need for them to start piano lessons. And unfortunately, the rhythm is the hardest ability to develop. I start with simple exercises of moving or marching with music, and then I add clapping for each beat, then every other beat, etc. So here's a little video with one of my students, Jackson. He's 6, and you'll see I'm playing, he's playing march, and you can see how unsuccessful he is in his first try. But you know what? But it's still developing. It gets better. As the next step, we can go to the next slide and next video. As the next step, I ask them to tap one note with the beat. That's why each book of my curriculum has CD with examples. So one of the examples, I think it's the same march, but we tap the note with it. Nope. Kevin. Kevin is 4 here. He just started this year. And now another very important activity for developing musical abilities is improvisation and composition. Elements of improvisation must be present in the classroom from very first lesson in almost any kind of activity, in work on rhythm, intonation, performance. Exercises for improvisation and composition attract children and increase their interest in lessons. It's important to remember that the students should always have fun and feel that playing the piano is easy and comfortable. Only then the students will look forward to the next lesson. Each lesson must be comparable with a theatrical play where the student is not a passive spectator, but an active participant, co-author, and main character. And now I'll probably need you later. Here are some examples for such work. For example, we start with imitating animals. Sit down. How would you imitate the bear? Yes. Imagine it's a bear. Okay. How about birds? We can also ask them to imitate different musical instruments, like imitate violin. Okay. All right. How about favorite cartoon characters? What's your favorite cartoon character? SpongeBob. Does he have a famous phrase or any sound he makes? Laugh. Can you try to use his laugh? personality of a child and their imagination, how they can do it. But she's, of course, a little shy here. In a classroom, when they already know you, they will respond really well to that. Another activity which is really good to finish the melody started by the teacher. For example, I'll play a question and I'll ask the student to answer to my question playing the end. Sounded pretty good. Of course, that's for you. Of course, for young children, it could be much shorter and much easier. Then compose the melody to given lyrics. Kids love it. Let's say, there was a little guinea pig who, being little, was not big. There was a little guinea pig. Let's try first section. There was a little guinea pig. Let's play. How would you play? Who, being little, wasn't big. Okay, that's not a very. If it's really, really good or kids love it, they want to play it again, I help them to write it down. And in our state, I don't know how it's here, but in our state, we have state fair auditions at the end of the year. And one of the categories is original composition. Most of my students, starting from the little ones, they all want to participate, even though there are no composers. And they all get first places because it's really coming from them. They like it and they enjoy so much to show other people what they did. But basically, it's what we do with them on the lesson. I just help them to write down. For the older children, I also offer a little accompaniment to familiar songs. So what I use perfect fifths, sonic fifths, let's say in C major, C and G. For subdominant, I use C and A, and for dominant, A and G. So let's try it. Repeat them. And then C and G. And now let's try to play. Let's try with this accompaniment. Okay. Spend a few more minutes to get them to listen more and then repeat. And again, they really like it, and then they bring me their own song. And most of the children's songs, you can use either tonic and dominant or tonic, subdominant, dominant functions. They probably will not. Some kids have really good ear for harmonization, and they do it even more interesting. But again, we are talking about average and below average ability students. That would be perfect. Also, you can prepare some very familiar short songs that they know and you know, and you can help them with this accompaniment. Every country, every region has its own favorite tunes, tales, and characters. Many great pedagogues were convinced that studying and using folk tunes of different cultures should take a leading role in the musical upbringing of young children. I completely agree with that. That should bring the children to understanding and developing the love to classical and contemporary music. Before I assign my students classical pieces, they play tons of traditional folk tunes of many different countries. And here's a video of the students, 4-year-old Yoyo and Chinyao. They are playing at the recital Russian folk song, The Birch Tree. The little one is 4. Her first recital. This song is a favorite practice of Russian sailors. It has nothing to do with sailors. It's a birch tree. Very sad. Have you noticed how the older sister made a little mistake? And this one was waiting for her and started right now. Thank you so much. And also, I wanted to pay attention. All the students from very first lessons always play duets with me or with CD or with older siblings or just with next student. I find it extremely important to develop their musical abilities, developing the listening ear, learning to listen by themselves and someone else. So here where I'm going to stop for now, and we'll continue a little bit later talking about technical development of technique in primary stage of piano lessons. And I would love to answer your questions if you have some. Yes.
When those two girls just played, was that an accompaniment that the older girl improvised?
No, I showed her.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wondered.
Because the little one learned this song in 2 weeks. So I just had quickly to show the older one to prepare for the recital. But usually, yes, I ask them to do that. Yes.
Do you teach your students twice a week, or how do you?
Unfortunately, once a week. Very rarely. For example, this year I have 2 little students who agreed to come twice a week because they were preparing to the competition in the summer, and I required for the last month to come twice a week. They saw such a huge difference that it was easy for me to convince them. Because when they come to the piano lessons, they've never heard that they have to take twice a week lessons. Besides, a lot of my students, they travel far to the lessons, and it's really hard. Yes?
Do you require parents to sit at the lesson?
Yes, at least for the first year. But after they sit at the first year, they are willingly continue sitting later. And I have some high schoolers whose parents are still at the lesson. They learn so much, even if they go to competitions or concerts, they can tell what's going on with other students or with their children. So they yeah.
When they attend the lesson, what is the parent's role? Just to sit or to?
Usually parents either record certain segments of the lesson or take notes. They are allowed to ask questions. My main interest is that kids get help between the lessons at home. If they don't, the next lesson is just correcting bad habits that they learned by themselves at home. Of course, parents cannot help as much as I can, but at least it's not as bad as if kids practice by themselves, especially young ones. Usually their critical thinking is developed by age 10, 11. That's when they start being able to practice by themselves. Yes?
You mentioned on the Facebook page that you were developing some teacher training materials.
I've done it. I'm waiting to print it and it will be for sale. But most of the things I'm talking right now, it's in that. Of course.
These activities that you went through, do you do them all like in conjunction with working in the method book and
Yes, yes. My next session about technique, I always change activities. I work a little bit on technique, a little bit on developing musical abilities, a little bit of sight reading, playing duet. So I try to fit as many things as I can in one lesson.
Are your lessons 30 minutes, 45 hours?
Normally I start with 30 minutes, but by the time they go to book 2, I already increased to 45 minutes. And by 3rd grade, most of my students take an hour lesson.
I will discuss how you teach reading notes.
Yes.
Irina, do you write a lesson plan for each student each week before you go into the lesson?
Say it again, please.
Do you have a lesson plan that you write for each student before you go into the lesson?
You know, I don't really write it. I have in my head so many those strategies and tools. What I do after the lesson, I make little notes what I accomplished and what I need to work more next time. Yes.
Do you have any other activities for children who cannot match pitch from the beginning? Sometimes I have them use sirens, going up and down, finding the low and the high in their voice, maybe week by week. Some of them get it, but not without a lot of help.
You know, I will be very patient with that and not force it. It does develop, and I've watched it with 100% of the students. It's just different pace. Each student has different pace. Be very careful. Don't force their voice to go too far. Just gradually increase the range and be happy to every success. When they feel successful, they want to try even more.
I noticed that you use a lot taking and speaking and just do whatever they need to understand. And I met a couple of kids here that they don't allow other people other than mother.
Yeah, and I've had students like that, but I gradually developed their trust. I made it kind of like a game. You can take my hand and give me your hand. Let's do it together. And very soon, by the next lesson, I don't have any problem with that. And I encourage them, and we do exercises together. Then I kind of do it by accident, take their hand before they even realize it. Then they are fine with it.
You are mainly talking about 6, 7.
No, actually, from 4. I do all these activities starting from 4 years old.
You say some students have said that they not able to do it and sit still until 9 or 10. And many students start around a later age. And I don't know what you think about the group a little later. They're already kind of formed. And how do you think about it?
Again, because our children here in the United States lack this preparation to instrumental training, I feel the earlier we start with them, probably not before 4 years old, the better they are prepared by that age that you mentioned to be able to play music. Not, of course, I started with 8 years old and 9 years old, but I would say their hands even more stiff at that age. And they're not as open to accept what they hear. So the best age to start is 5, 6, the best. But 4 is okay too, it just takes a little bit longer. But our, competitions that go by age, kids at 7 and 8 already play 4th, 5th, 6th grade repertoire. So we don't wait too long. Yes.
What do you tell the parents is your expectation for practicing? 7 days a week, 6 days a week?
I do insist on everyday practice. Of course, if they're out of town, but it doesn't happen too often, or if child is not feeling good. But my requirement is every day, and they start because there is a lesson and they hear what I do. They start with approximately the same activities, and kids start practicing from 15 minutes and increasing to 30 minutes every day at the beginning stages.
How do you make the student consistent come? It's really some of the students starts to come to the abandoned,
No, it really depends.
Hard.
It depends on age and personality of the
Yeah,
student.
personality.
I'll tell you, I asked one of my 6-year-old students to count out loud, and he said, I like to play the piano with my mouth shut. That's a very common problem. But what I am trying to do, instead of making them count, which is important too, to understand how many beats, but I try to make up lyrics so they can hear what's going on, or their names, or word phrases, or even sentences. With some kids, I have like lyrics for the whole 4 pages. So we try to do it together. Again, it develops their creativity, their imagination. For example, one of my intermediate students, she played a contemporary piece called Allegra Furiosa. It goes like that. And she's, by personality, she's very shy, she's very pleasant girl, and it was really hard to get her to play furiously. So I said, what do you hate in your life the most? And she said, swimming. You know who I'm talking about. It's her friend. And I said, okay, what would you say? And she had trouble with rhythm and with expression. So we made up with something like, I hate swimming so much. The piece was just sounding absolutely differently because it's something that personally they feel. So that really helps to develop lyrics to make up with them together, even though it doesn't make much sense sometimes. It's not really rhyme, but it really helps.
Does the parent help them with their finger position like you do?
They try. It doesn't work most of the time, but you know, it gets better with the time. They learn, and kids learn. Sometimes kids tell them, "You don't know. I know better. My teacher told me that. Don't tell me this." So I don't insist that they take their kids' hand because it's going to be arguing. I just ask them to be patient and encourage them to try again and show them the video from the lesson, how I work them. So it really brings back memories. And yes.
What do the parents do that have another sibling, like a younger sibling, during that lesson?
I have a waiting room in my studio, and there are a lot of books and magazines and toy box. And if kids are not, babies, they can live quietly and do their stuff, or kids reading books or video games. Yeah, if they are babies, either parents hold them in their hands or hold them in the other room and just record the lesson so they can watch later at home.
Do you keep a notebook for your students that you send home with them? And then you also write your own notes, or do you write the notes for what you want to do that?
No, I write notes for students, which songs they need to practice and what to pay attention to. Not with very little ones. Very little ones, I don't try anything. Parents write it because I just, if I start writing, kids lose attention. They start running around. I just can't with little ones. But when they are 6, 7, I do. They can read my assignments. Video.
She has a YouTube channel of everything. What device do you use?
Sometimes I use just an video camera. Sometimes I use iPad. For short, I use iPad. I've tried very unsuccessfully because they think they know much better. So all of them took from other teachers.
How did you find that? What strategy?
You know, with my first one, my oldest one, my sister was teaching. With my second one, I found a very good teacher who taught in conservatory in Estonia. But she was so harsh. My poor girl was crying every lesson. And so that was the last time. And then she tried to stick a little bit with my sister, but they quit by 8th grade, both of them. And this one takes from my young colleague who follows my steps. She is actually she helped me a lot with the books, Olga, and she teaches Julia. But Julia is not very serious learner because mommy never has time for her. So she is quite lazy. She does a little bit. Yes.
You mentioned earlier the Russian school of piano playing. Is this, I'm actually very interested in maybe getting a book and learning a little bit about it. Do you incorporate, are there principles of the Russian school?
My curriculum roots in Russian piano technique. So I'm going to talk all about it today.
For the videos that you take, do you put them all on YouTube for parents who can't attend, or?
No, actually, parents record on their own devices. What I put on YouTube, something I found would be interesting to other teachers. Little segments when I work on ear training or on certain technique, or relaxation exercises. And you saw a couple of them today, and I'll show much more later today tomorrow. Yes.
I have many adult students who are between 70 and 80 whose hands are very rigid. Do you have any ideas to work with them? They're adult beginners who love it. They don't have a lot of limitations.
That's a problem, of course, but again, whatever I'm going to tell today at 4 o'clock, or whatever time it is, it could be applied to adults too. So I'll tell a lot about relaxation and freedom of the arms and the hands and everything. Please.
Is that the same for the Russian school principle?
What?
The use of arm weight and how to use the arm?
I mean, it's not only Russian theory.
But is that an important part of that?
I hate to be the bad guy, but I'm going to cut off questions for now. We have plenty of other sessions with Irina and plenty of other opportunities to ask follow-up questions. We're going to head back over the heart, which at 11:30, that's about 15 minutes from now, we'll be back here for a presentation from Deborah Moriarty on practice techniques. And I got a text from my wife. She wants to know how many people. Can you please raise your